Okay. What time is it? Still 5 minutes, and then we start.
Is it early November for Elias?
What?
Movember for the.
Yeah. The Corona beard.
Shall we bring the couch?
Couch would be cool.
Yeah, couch.
Couch set up. There's also a cable.
Yeah, the box was so short.
Okay, let's use that as well. Fucking hell. Oh my god. Oh my god. Wait. I need first look. Got internet. We need some beer, huh? Does it work somehow? Doesn't look like. It's supposed to work. Don't trust this game.
Now it's working. At least it's blinking. Orange. I guess.
Good.
No? Orange? Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, works. Yes. All in. So, do you still hear us?
Yes.
Good. Okay, the academic delay is finished, so we can start. And welcome. Let me just say that it was a pain the last month, but it was worth. The last Elementa meetup was even before the last release, so let me just get here. Let's share the screen. Do you see my screen?
It's loading. Yes.
Okay. It's just the change log. So, yeah, since in the last versions, I had the panel, there were some other nodes, some fixes, but then I decided to focus a bit on the style because I wanted to get closer to CSS, and in the end, I did it from scratch. So, but it was worth because now it's quite powerful, and
The resolution is very high. No. The speed is quite slow down.
Yes. Shall I try to go to Full HD? So let's just jump into it, and I'll show you the new style system. So as I said, I completely reworked the whole thing, the mechanism behind. Now everything happens within the component, the stylable component itself. Which every widget has by default. And I even put it in advanced category. It's not something that it's not meant to be like something that the user put in the patch to extend the widget. Because previously we were using it to like flag some widgets in order that we could address them. But now this system is completely different, and we use different mechanisms. Let's just do it. Style sheet. As usual, we got a style sheet input in the root. Do you see good enough? Is it fine? Okay. So we got style sheet node that takes some rules, and you can decide to start or not from the base style. Let me put a style rule. Yeah, I need to still clean a bit. Mechanism node, please. Whatever. I need to clean it a bit. But as you expect, you have a style sheet with some rules. This is one rule. And he expects iProperty editor, some property setters. So there is like, for example, set style property value. It comes with the string input for the name or with a enumeration for convenience, because I prepared a set of enumeration that we often use in our widgets. So let's, for example, choose background color. And this takes a T, so we need to put color here. Okay, now if we connect this, basically all the widgets will just get that, because this rule simply overrides the rule that is in the default, in the base style sheet. Okay. So every rule comes obviously with a in group, or there's also a spectral version, so that you can set multiple of these to set different foreground color, for example.
Which nodes can I connect? Only set style property.
Set style property. You can define all the, because let me show you maybe inside what is. We have this data type that defines a property as CSS property, a style property, which has a name, a value, which is an object, initial value, inherit, initial, concept. Some of them are not yet implemented, but it works. So this is really everything that is described in the style sheet in the end, it's a property, no? You edit the properties.
So property setters that I can.
Yeah. Set style property, and there are some predefined utility nodes. This is to set the value of the property. This one to set the inherit, but in the end they just operate on certain properties, certain yeah. So in this way we can operate, add some setters, and now the cool thing is the rule, because in CSS, as you know, there are some selector rules that allows you to target the setters to something specific. Everything now happens to delegates. So here I can describe who basically takes these rules. So make some space. So let's say now by default it will be applied to every widget, but let's say that we target we want to target this slider here, which is this one. What I need to describe here is basically it's a validation rule that gets validated per widget. So this is here it comes the widget, and here there's this validation thing. So I can say, for example, I just want to apply this this rule to the widget that has ID like as ID foo2. No? It can be scripted. This is the validation rule. So in this way, in this case, this rule will be valid just for this guy. Obviously, if we also, let's call it this one, true, and also this other one will take, okay? But what we can do also, let's say, we can be more richer in describing these. So we can say, okay, you need to have ID foo, and also you need to, this object needs to have a parent, okay, which has ID, which is itself is another delegate. So now, this is
parent value ID.
Yeah, look, now, for example, this is not valid because there is no object that has this rule valid. So if I move this here, now just this object without this. So you basically can patch these validation rules that get applied, so that get checked in the tree. And so let me show you all this. It's a collection of utilities, and it's just a way to inspect and to validate rules for trees, not necessarily connected to style. I'm using the style to validate, to target these rules, specific things, but in the future I am planning to use this mechanism also to define certain rules to collect, to retrieve values and to send over network, for example. You can be very specific in choosing which element you're interested in that goes to a specific channel, for example. It's a nice generic way to collect and route basically things. So this is query interface. Yeah. I took inspiration obviously from CSS, but we can already do more than CSS here. So you can ask, these are the basic selectors, like you can check, I want to have object needs to be of type or with ID, has a tag, has attribute with value. And that's why we don't need anymore this stylable component that you put to customize your widget, because what you really do in the end is customize your widget using other components like ID component, for example, or you can use taggable component and say, okay, if just apply my style rule to the widget that has tag this color, for example, because then I'm providing this color as a tag. Okay, if I do that, these two, yeah, we both have this tag, we receive these style rules. So, and this is the way, now we are much more flexible in giving tags, attributes, the type of the widget is basically coded inside the widget itself. So every widget has a type. So this is an operation that comes in the VL.Elementa interface. So here you can define a type name.
Do you want to change that? The term type is already cut. No, it can be very confusing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, naming is still something that we need to discuss.
Like this is in CSS. There's also this class thing.
Class
Type, stuff like that.
Class is tag.
Yeah.
It's just literally just tagging things.
Yeah.
And the type here in CSS is element. Okay. And then there is the ID also in CSS. And then, yeah, we can have.
Why did we stick with?
I don't know. Could be. Could be.
It was a bit confusing. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But maybe also.
Could be element.
But you also can query for any component.
Yes, that's the cool thing, because these are the basic selectors. Okay, so you can query for any of these. You can also query if an object is in a certain state. So we have also dynamic rules. You can dynamically a rule like there, which I grabbed from somewhere else. So, but just to show you that you can describe different rules in just using the states of the widgets. Like if you are in a certain state, or one of your children is in a certain state, and so you can be very creative in this regard. This.
Also, the tags can be any data type. That's a very powerful thing.
Tags is objects. Like for example, here I was using a color. It's literally everything. It's just an object. But going back there, so these are the main ones. There's a simple one. There's this one, has component, so you can literally get crazy and say, okay, I apply this rule just to a widget which has a component which then you cast internally. Like if you have a component like a flexibility component with value bigger than 0.5, you can do whatever you want. Especially since I'm moving everything to components, and the next step would be also to bring also the value property itself, the component. So you can literally just say, okay, take this. The style rule if the slider value is above 0.5, this kind of stuff. You really can be very descriptive and accurate. Then obviously I got all the hierarchy rules, like an ancestor with certain properties. If the node has a parent or has a parent, we delegate, has a parent which has itself, I don't know, has a certain type or has a descendant. So you can also, like, going up and down to the tree, children, descendant, some logics. Fine, yeah, I want to validate this and this, or this or these. And here you can check, okay, if the object is the third child, like for example, this one. Let's say there are two toggles here. If no, of type use toggle, okay, like that. And I'm gonna all the toggles, no? Let's say that first child, just I want the simple version. So if you're a toggle and you are first child, oh, interesting.
None of them are the first child, I guess.
Ah, yeah, of course. No, look, yeah, this is, so none of them is the first child. What you can do is, this is what I wanted to do, is first child, in region, and you can say of type. So if you are the first child of that type, okay, so in this way, just this one. So this one, because here you see that there is just this one. So it can be restricted, no? So it's first child, last child, and last child. Sibling, you can check for the siblings. Certain distance, if it's before or after you. So I started from CSS and I built more. But this is the way you then build the style rules. So, for example, the default style sheet, this one, we get inside, you see that basically like the background property, it's just a bunch of properties, setters, with no selector because they are applied. But here you can customize a bit these three buttons, for example. So if you are of type toggle bang press, then you basically can adjust with this value the padding, which is the padding of the inner part of the button, or the alignment of the text. Over, you define the target, and as you see, you build the rules using this mechanism here. I'm quite happy with it, and it looks good. Yeah, I will just leave it to you also to validate and to try. This is the new style system, and it's a bit more complex than the other one, as you would expect. And everything happens through the stylable components now. As I said, it's not anymore something that you plug. The widget you can, but it doesn't make sense. It's something that comes with the widget when you put them in the patch. And here, the stylable components takes care of retrieving, getting a style sheet, and depending on the local properties, basically create a style for the widget. Let's say if we go the slider, let's take the slider as an example. Well, this is it's normal because it's like, you know? So every widget now has get widget properties that on create you provide the desired properties that you want to have locally. And this guy then takes care of computing taking the stylable component from the widget and the local style, and also to compute the style, and also get and propagates and basically write his own style to the children of this widget, if it has children. In case that this is placed, this stylable component is inside a layout, you can basically create, compute the style and pass it to the children. So, because this is something also new, I don't remember if it was already in the previous version, but every component now holds the widget itself. So has access to the widget that hosts it. So, for example, from within any component, you can check all the other components, or you can check the widget itself that hosts it. So you have access to everything. And that's why if we go in the VL.Elementa interface, there is no even anymore set style or get style operation, because that part is managed entirely from within the stylable component itself. It takes care of retrieving the stylable components of the children and talks to them. Okay, so everything is happening through the stylable component itself. So what I'm trying to do is dissolving as much as possible this interface. The next would be to get rid of the layout, like of the bounds. There will be a layoutable component which will basically host all these. And what else? Maybe something else. Yeah, the value property of the widget will be a component. So I'm trying to reduce to the very essence of this architecture, this pattern of the entity component. So everything will be a component in the end. And this is very nice because it allows you to modularize much more and say, okay, component can be very complex and you can handle yourself, you can manage yourself. And we don't need to change the system. We just plug into it this new component that knows exactly what to do in the context and how to talk to any other of those. So, yeah, this is the style. Any question so far? Okay. Then I would leave. Yeah, I will leave it to you, Randall.
Amazing stuff as usual, Dottore. As you saw, Nathan prepared all this, so I went ahead and took it upon myself to plug CSS into it and see what we could do with that. So let me show you a little very simple demo. Does everybody hear me okay? Yes, cool. All right, so what we have here, and you can see my screens, yes? Yes, okay. So we have a very simple, let's disregard this top bit for now. It's just a few rotaries, a vector 2 and a slider that you can see here. Right now you can see they're using Elementa's default style sheet. And this here on the right is a little CSS file I prepared for the demo. And these guys are just on a columns layout, passed down to the root, simple patch. I created this little node called Css Stylesheet, which if I enable now, you will see already did something to my styles here. And let's have a look at what's going on here. So as you can see, I have, for example, a background color set to the columns class, which is a tag in Elementa, which is styling basically this widget here. And you can see if I were to change it, I don't know, to white, for example, it will change to white, right? But then, so that's a very basic stuff. And then I also have a rule for the rotary widgets, setting up their color. So that's why they have this kind of blue shade text there. Again, I could, you know, if I said, I don't know, red, there you go, red. Now the interesting thing is that using what Nathan just showed us with the taggable and ID components, for example, I can set some rules here. What I'm doing here is I'm giving a tag, which is the equivalent of the CSS tag, to the first and the last rotary and to the vector 2D. And the blue class, as you see here, sets the background color. So if I enable this, you will see that the background color for the first and the last rotary changed, but some other things also changed. And let's have a look. So I have here, I have an ID selector or style rule that says the text color to orange and the border color to whatever that is. That's some shade of yellow, which is what's happening to this guy here. And you can see that this guy, which is the third rotary, has this ID of my rotary, which is why it's getting this rule applied to it. And you can see that this first guy, no, wait. You can see that this guy still has a background color of blue because it not only takes this rule, but is also getting this rule applied because it has a class blue and is a rotary, right? And this vector2 component, vector2d, only has the class blue applied to it, so it only gets the background color property. We started, I mean, this is very basic, and as you can see, I'm only dealing with colors. For this, I'm using EXCSS, as Tebian suggested at some point, which turned out to be just enough for what I wanted to do. And it has some nice features, like you don't need to worry about parsing all the variants of, you know, how to specify a color. You could also do things like, you know, and is it, let's see, which one is this? Ah, yes, you see, the border color here is white. It's just very hard to see. But yeah, it's working. So if we go in here and see what's going on, this is just a file watcher monitoring this file. And then this is EXCSS in here already. I literally just referenced the nuget and worked straight on the API. No need to wrap it. And I'm just parsing, getting all the style rules from the style sheet and doing this parse thing, which is where I am basically getting the selectors and converting the selectors into these validation rules Nathan has now created. So for example, if the selector starts with a hash, then I need a with ID rule, or if it starts with a dot, I need a hashtag rule. And also I'm starting to work here, as you can see, unfinished the states like hover and focus and visited and that kind of thing. But it's also literally just checking the selector string and doing some string parsing and adding this particular thing. And you see here, for example, I get all the selectors, but as you can see already here, I have, for example, this will be one selector that ends up with a rule of type something, and this will be of hashtag something. But in order for a widget to comply with this rule, it has to meet both criteria. So basically space means an and, which is what's happening here. If they're separated by space, then it needs to meet all of them with an and. And if they're comma separated, as for example, in this other example I have here, if it's comma separated, then it will look for all the rules, combine them with an and the ones that are comma separated get combined with an or, which is what you see down here. So I'm basically creating all these delegates dynamically based on the selectors, then passing them down to this and getting out of the style rule, in this case, the value, which I'm only parsing for color right now, but this needs to be extended to handle pixel values for padding and, you know, all the rest of the possible values that we can get out of CSS. But yeah, that's kind of it. Let me quickly show you. So we started this spreadsheet where I took upon myself to map all the CSS available style properties to Elementa properties, which, as you can see, most of the Elementa properties don't match any CSS property, and most CSS properties don't match Elementa properties, but the ones that do, basically what you already saw in place. And this, for example, is all the HTML elements that exists and whether or not they map to a widget that we already have in Elementa. And the same is true for pseudo classes like hover, focus, active, etc. And this pseudo elements like after, before, and so on, which should all, I mean, at least this one should already be tackleable with what Nathan just showed us. The discussion with the elements or the types themselves and the style properties is basically something we need to address together. Like, I guess the question there is, are we trying to make Elementa exactly like HTML, or are we trying to just use the basic rules of CSS and apply them to Elementa, but end up with our own custom type of tags and names and things? And yeah, I guess that's one of the questions we need to answer as a group. But, you know, for an initial prototype, it already works quite well, and you can see the flexibility and the ease of use you get out of something like this. Any questions? Okay. I guess that's it for me, Nathan.
It's really good. Yeah, thanks so much, Randall.
Sure.
For this. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, the point is how much we wanted to stick to CSS, and I mean at some point we need to find a threshold, like a cut, because Elementa has a certain structure. Some of the widgets are done in a certain way, so I don't know. At some point, we just need to make a sort of standard of how Elementa is done, the widgets are done, then bridge it. So it will be, I mean, it's impossible to pretend that you simply take a CSS of a website and you apply to Elementa. It doesn't.
That would be my dream, to be honest. Like, I have a website that looks good, and I just, of course, some things won't make sense, but it would be great, to not need to now change. Like, I might not even understand what the CSS is doing, right? And if I start changing the tag name for the Elementa widget name and this property for that one and so on, it could just break,
I'm pretty sure we can the cool thing with this system is that we can already ship the widgets with a certain amount of classes implemented, like tags, which means that, okay, we have our layout nodes, like columns, stack, and maybe if you want to find a correspondence in CSS, that's the div. Internally, we can already provide tag div. So no matter what, if you take a CSS file and you use it, still it will recognize the widgets. So we can enrich the widgets with some tags and classes.
Yeah, but the tag is a class. So I would need to change all the HTML elements to classes. And this might cause collisions with actual classes that are named like that. I mean, there's some things to consider there, but yeah, that's an interesting approach, I would say.
I think that the only problem is the type, itself, like the element thing, that is something given to the widget, but everything which is in CSS is class. In our domain is tags, and you can just put as much as many.
But the type of the element is something you set yourself when you create the widget. So can a widget have more than one type? Is this okay?
This is a bit confusing. No, there is just one type, okay?
But I mean, we have the Elementa type, and underneath.
And he would need to change everything to a class. Then it's getting boring.
I know, but still.
Ah, look at him! Wow. Hello, Johnny.
Oh. Hello.
Hello. No sound.
He's muted. You're muted.
You're muted. Ah.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you, man.
It's very low.
It's very low, very quiet.
Okay, because it's like a concert microphone. You have to be very close. Can you hear okay now?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. So I was thinking now what I could do instead of having still using this type field into the widgets, instead of being one text, one string, could be a spread.
Yeah, exactly. And then you could have your Elementa type, but you add the HTML type also.
Or the conversion in the parser.
The parser just puts you have a table, you just jump through it, and when you know.
Yeah,
that's the easiest thing, because then it stays where it should stay.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Elias.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I would pack Elementa. If you just needed a table.
No, but because trigger means something else. Having multiple types, but it's another discussion. Sable, you wanted to say something?
I had a question. What about the reverse, like style to CSS? Wouldn't that be nice to have that also? Maybe for example, maybe somebody prefers to patch a style sheet rather than type it, and then you can maybe patch a style sheet. Or another use case could be that if at some point we have some rabbit control web client, then you can kind of share the same style in VL and with the rabbit and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
And in theory, I think it's just the reverse from what you did.
Yeah, it should be doable.
Why not? It's all about, I guess, that library, if it allows you to join back.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah, I can create style sheets and define rules just as I read them out. So it's literally just the mirroring of what we're doing.
That's cool.
Yeah. And Elias, I hear, already went through the pain of putting this version of XCSS into Gamma. So
it's done. Yeah, okay.
Well, a unit test is failing now, but. So you should can get rid of this hack soon.
Cool.
Oh, this renaming. No?
Great.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, this fact that the XCSS already does, for example, this, like, I would have had to parse, like, to do the string parsing for all these types of color representations, which is, come on. And this thing is just handing me out a consistent value and doing it for me. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, so
what happens if you're doing a typo the library can't handle?
I haven't checked what it gets if the CSS is incorrect. Good shout.
It doesn't add the rule. I've seen that already. It simply ignores it. It drops. So yeah, if you have an editor which has a proper CSS validation and he tells you this is wrong, those things will not make it into the style sheet, like in this library.
Okay.
Do you already have a conclusion how this goes together? Or I didn't really understand. Like the Seba was saying something of patching style sheets is interesting, or what was the theory?
Basically, this mechanism could be reversed, and so that you could use Elementa to patch style sheet.
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone wants to patch the vvvv patch editor style sheet, right?
Another good use case.
Yeah. A vvvv theme creator. There you go, Nathan. You will be, they will make a statue of gold with your face on it.
Might be a new elementum called Node.
Ooh. Boom. Yeah.
Okay, so,
But your system is nearer to your library. It can express more, right? With these checks for certain runtime types, and you can express more than CSS, right?
yes.
So for somebody who only wants to patch, that's the most natural approach to use that. And then the question is how to combine it with CSS that I can download. So maybe the downloaded CSS is my base, and only the very special things I can just apply on top of the CSS.
Yeah, I think that's not a problem because you can always always merge style sheets. Okay, so you can basically could, for example, have the parser and then combine it with a patched style sheet, and then so there's no limit in that. So you can nest, cascade them, and combine them.
But when I patch a style sheet, then this reverse idea to make a CSS out of it only works for certain
rules.
Yeah, of course. I
A
mean,
subset, yeah.
if you use very complex and specific things of this system that are not really available in CSS, then
Yeah, you can write out a warning. Sorry, I couldn't translate rules.
Yeah. But for most of the rules, simple rules, there's no problem. So this system.
Yeah, maybe we should tag those special cases somehow so that people know, like, oh, I'm getting out of CSS land now. Maybe an advanced category or something, you know.
First child of type. Is that possible to be expressed?
Probably not.
No, probably yes. I don't know, Randall. What do you think? Is this possible?
I think.
Can you specify a type? I mean, needs to be the first child of that type. I think so.
I think you can. Yeah, I think so.
Because
you can do the first child space and the name of the element, and then it has to match both. Yeah.
Not sure. Well, I think there is I don't know. It's a bit weird to me, CSS, but there's a way to do this. What's impossible in pure CSS is to use the OR operation multiple times. Like they handle this is using the space combinator, no?
The comma.
Comma combinator. But that can happen just as a final rule, no? Okay, this rule applies to this, but here you can get fancy and say, okay, at any point you can introduce rules that are valid, or, I mean, it's a more complex tree. So this is not possible to translate, maybe CSS. But I don't know, at the point when somebody will create this exporter, there obviously there will be a check that goes, okay, I couldn't translate this.
And in the end, I couldn't translate anything.
Oh,
Shit.
it's a style sheet.
What is CSS anyway?
Okay. Good. So that is it for the style. There are any other questions?
Suggestions, ideas, critics, anything?
I guess you might need to play a bit with it. One thing that we noticed, but no, that's the delegate concern we need, but we already saw it now. Yeah, nothing. Okay, then I would go ahead and show you.
Can I touch on one last thing, Nathan?
Yes.
So, for example, one of the immediate issues we have right now is that Elementa has foreground color and background color, and HTML elements only have a background color. There's no foreground color. Foreground color is just the text color. So if you wanted to make, for example, a toggle like Nathan has it there, you would have a nested box, one with one background color and the other one with another background color, like a nested div. So this is immediately untranslatable because structurally they're different. You see where I'm getting at?
Mm.
So we also need to think like, does it make sense to remake Elementa so that it's only using boxes, and so that we can apply the same kind of rules, or do we create the foreground color CSS property for Elementa only? You know, this is kind of.
I mean, going that route would mean you complexify a lot the widget themselves, because every widget suddenly is made of many different components. Each one of them is styled in a certain way, you know. So it's okay. A slider is a div containing another div, which has a certain color text containing another div. So each widget becomes a very complex object.
Yes.
Couldn't you just use the text in that scenario, the text color for the button for the inner thing?
Yeah, but what if you also have text and a foreground color, and now you cannot address them individually?
What would that case be? I have a foreground color and the text color, and they are different, really?
Yeah, of course. You have a button with a border with a different color and a foreground color which is red, and the text needs to be white. Wow.
Ugly to me.
Yeah, but if it was red and red, you couldn't read it, would you? If the foreground color and the text color are the same, you wouldn't see the text. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I would do the, I don't know. If I would do the parser or the importer, I would just translate foreground color, text color to foreground color.
And then the color the text is not visible.
Yeah. That only works for non-text combinations.
I don't know, here probably, yeah,
So you have an element, you have background color, foreground color, and text color.
yes.
I thought you only have foreground.
No, because the idea was that all the widgets somehow comes with these three components. You have a background, a foreground for some active parts at the bottom, so slider, and then you have text.
Yeah, and what is about the text, the font? Can you set the font via the style sheet?
Yeah. Now I basically split the Skia paint into individual properties, so you can address individually. Like, and if we show.
But sorry, isn't foreground color just called color in CSS?
No, that would be the.
In CSS, there's color and there's background color. So it's two things.
Yes, and the color means text color. Like the color property in CSS means text color.
My only question was whether it's possible to think it in that same way in the system. You only have background color and text color. That's it. And you adhere to these rules, then you build the widgets in a way that they manage with that. No? That's that. Instead of having 3 colors, you only have 2, and you work with those 2. That was my idea, essentially. And my question is there really an element in Elementa which uses all 3 properties?
Always.
Always.
Each one of them. Yes. Maybe it's it's like the basic. Look, this is our render. This is my root. And this is my slider. Oh. Boom. You got background color, foreground color, and text color. It's very basic scheme that you can have, no?
But you could, I don't know, you could get rid of the back. I don't know. I don't. I would not need all 3 of them. And what I'm trying to say is, if you would have started differently from the beginning and you only had those 2 colors, you would have managed also.
Yeah, I mean, you do it with HTML.
2 is not 3 though. No, really, I don't know. You need to specify 3 different colors for these 3 different objects.
No, I could have said I put some element in the back, which I do as a user, and put the slider on top of it. Then
Yeah.
it has this color in the back.
The argument was that then everything is.
No, I'm not saying the slider needs to do this. I do it as a user. I have a grid in the back which is gray, and I have those sliders in there. The same. I would do it then. I would set it up that way. The slider itself would not be so complex.
So the slider, you will see just this part.
And the border, maybe.
What's the color of the border?
But there is a border color, no? Border is a different thing, no?
Yeah, border color is a separate thing.
Yes. There you go.
And what if you want to define? I don't know. You want to define, for
I'm
example.
just saying they're doing it like this.
Do you see the hover effect?
Yeah, you need to hover as well. Yeah.
Whole background.
I think this. Think about as an object. Okay, has to be an object with a certain identity, with a certain. I need to grab it, hold it, and this is the object. Has a background and a bar on top. So it's convenient to think of it in this way. Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole Windows Forms thing, for example, always has these elements, no? Background, foreground, and text.
What about buttons in HTML? I mean, HTML also has a button. How is it done there?
Yeah, this is up to the browser, really.
You can't style those.
Yeah, you can, but most people tend to just use divs and custom JS, the event.
No one is using those.
You usually end up using those because the form ones are, you never know what you're going to get. It depends on the browser. And
Okay. Mm.
So, yes. So let me just go to, well, let's go through. So new style system, new selectors to, CSS parser. There are some utility nodes, user utility nodes, retrieve some client bounds informations from the context, from the Elementa. Display text option, highly requested from York, first of all. No. So all the 3 widgets. What? They come with an hidden pin display. So you have text, toggle on the bang, and then you press. What else? As I was showing you, these are spread of sliders, but I have this sticky behavior now that I can literally paint. This was quite needed it's the first attempt somehow. It's the first version of this sort of spreadable thing to handle spread. At least you can retrieve all the values here, spread.
And is this painting done by the stack component, or how
No,
is it
no,
done?
no. It's the logic inside the slider itself. So it would be a component probably also. But basically, if I press space for now and just leave like that, in the future, I'd like to allow the user to patch its own condition when to trigger this. And if it doesn't provide
When to leave or enter the specific element, so to say.
what?
So it's a rule to override that the mouse is fixed to one element. Or what?
Yeah, basically, now I'm pressing space, and wherever I click over the widget, I basically write exactly in that value, right? And this is valid also if I already am keeping pressed and I enter and I over the widget. So
so you don't press the mouse button at all.
No, I'm pressing it now. I'm pressing it. I'm holding space. I'm holding it down now. Then if I leave space, I go back to the usual behavior, no? Slider. If I
That's cool. Yeah.
if I press space, then I go back to this painting mode. And the cool thing is that, and this principle should be applied to every widget which somehow represent visually and spatially its own value. So think about, yeah.
So you could put another thing somewhere else on the screen and it will behave the same.
Let me show this. It's fine. Got my rotaries, and this is the rotary thing. I can paint them. Why? Because the rotary now is done with a slider. Because in the end, what I understood yesterday is that this is exactly the same mechanism of a slider. Okay? What just changes is the drawer. Okay, so I just took a slider and assigned a different drawer. That's it. And since I implemented this sticky behavior for the slider, now it's also in the rotary.
I was just hoping the revelation would be more magical. Like, and this works because.
Drum roll.
No, I'm still working on that. But it's already quite generic, I would say. If you look inside, there's a generic.
And I find it was just.
Yeah, to ruin.
Oh, you ruined my.
So, yeah, another thing which is new is this formattable component. Oh my gosh, this is the easy one. Okay, let me just add it here, for example, to the slider. Then, if I just leave a space.
Is that okay? Put one component into many.
Why not?
Okay.
This, yeah, correctly. But, well, let me just maybe try with this one. It's easier. Okay, I can choose, and here it's basically it's working with in the same way. I mean, you can just format your own the value, or there is an advanced version in which you can get fancier. So you can still define the value itself, how it's formatted, and then you can build a complex rule in which you define, okay, I've got my value, which is the item 0, and then I've got, say, space unit, no? Like Either like that. No, sorry. Yes. This one. And then we have something else, and that something else is this one. Okay. So if we put this one there,
it's a format string underneath, isn't it?
yeah. Okay, it needs to update somehow. It doesn't react correctly. But then you can customize properly the way you visualize the value. Okay. You have more other two inputs you can put here. So this was needed. The only thing missing is now doesn't work for, like, let's say, a vector. You might want to specify each of the components of that vector with a different one. And so I'm gonna put these, instead of being just one single value, they are spread, so spreadable. So if you put two, you can, like, for a vector, you expect to put x and y, no? The values, format the values. You want to format differently. So it would be possible to provide for each of the components of your object a different rule.
You ever need that? Do you ever need that?
Yeah, I also wonder. It's really needed.
Because you want to write X, Y, Z.
Yes. Min, max, or whatever. Then formatable, okay. So let me go. The nice grid now.
Drum roll.
Finally, Tavian will be happy.
Oh yeah.
So let's go for this. We've got a new nice, by the way, I rewrote all the layout nodes. And much cleaner, much simpler. They come just as a spectral version. There is no control, there's no pin group anymore because it wasn't really usable. I mean, as soon as you were starting to add pins and you wanted to stretch, it was like a 1 kilometer node just to somehow. So it's just convenient to have a const here and just have a spread. So I will also have finally the pin group on the components to match the pattern that we have for all the other nodes. But if you look here, now it's much simpler. Also, internally, we just use the same mechanism. I split it in model and runtime to optimize so that this is a class so that it can properly cache. The layout node itself, it caches if not necessary to rebuild the layout. I mean, it feels much, much faster than the layouting system. So then let's see what you feel, but my feeling is that's much, much better. And then I created this new widget, which is a grid in which you can define the row, columns, okay? And then you can, here I'm just building some widgets, and then I can just provide the spread and they will get inserted in the grid. I can even decide, okay, column first. So it fills first the column and goes that direction. I can also say inherit count from the children. It's depending on the number of the children, then it creates some columns or rows, depending on what you choose here. Okay. Yes, then let's say that you've got this grid. You can also specify per widget where it goes, okay, in which cell will be placed, okay? So you can prepare a layout and target them individually.
What happens if I throw many at the same thing? They just...
Well, they will be just all there, overlap.
Okay.
Now they are all same size, but it's only connect. this one, you will see that, well, not necessarily because,
It's not connected, this target cell thing.
I think the IO box is not connected. The target call.
yes, yeah, I removed it. But yeah, you see, they are overlapped. And okay, well then what you expect is just being able to adjust size of the columns, size of the rows. It's just 4, so we repeated the pattern. It's 2, and you will have this behavior. And oops. Okay. You can decide, okay, I want to inherit the width from the children. These columns here didn't have any children in there. So let me disconnect this one. And that's why they were empty. So if I do that, for example, if I leave these, so some rows, some columns will be empty. Then if I choose inherit from inherit count from children, I will have just yeah, they will be removed, not the one in between. Obviously. Anyway, let me randomize a bit. So that you can better see this mechanism. So I can say inherit, and the columns and the rows will inherit. Obviously, you can decide individually, you know, just inherit the height from the children or inherit the width. You can also normalize the final thing to your widget size, because you also provide a size, no, bound to this grid. So you can always
Very nice.
define that, okay, I want to normalize both axes anyway there, and then everything that you do is somehow is balanced. It's like percent F. How do you say it?
Responsive layout, kind of.
No, but I mean, these are not anymore the real width of the columns, but they basically, it's a weighted sum of the entire thing. But still, you can manage that, no? So.
Just one thing, of course. How about scroll bars?
No, that's a different thing. That's a different thing.
But I think you had a panel that has scroll bars, right? Can you now plug this?
Yeah, you can put this inside a panel. Yeah,
and make it very high, and then you can scroll it, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's another object, basically. You would put a panel and inside a grid. The panel is the object that takes something and navigate in it.
What happens if one of the elements is much bigger inside?
Like this.
Yeah, I just renders them over.
Yeah. I can maybe put an option to clip it, but that has to happen at the cells level, and so I need to do it. But going back, one more friendly setup. So yeah, this is setup, so we can inherit, we can normalize. We got margins for the rows, for the columns, and for the rows independently. Then we can define how to align the widgets in the column and in the rows, and we can spread this. Okay, so we can say, okay, the first one is top, second one is middle, and so on. So you can, for example, do, I mean, you already know what I'm doing, I guess. Let's say that inherit the height of the widget, And then we spread this. We say the first one go on the right and the second one go on the left. And this could be already, and let's randomize a bit then. Show. Inherit count on the children. This is already an inspector, somehow, no? Layout, I would say. Could be, you know, if you want them to be aligned in the center, no? Top. Now, well, let's go back to 1. Oops. 1. Or you could do, if you do bottom, obviously just the one that has a smaller thing. So that's kind of it. I hope you enjoy.
So last question would be, could you now with those nodes compose a new widget that behaves exactly like the Windows file browser, File Explorer, for example? Because that was basically what I was trying to do. I have a bunch of data and I just want to browse it with some UI. So that was the use case I was looking for with this grid layout. So can you now imagine that this would be easy to do?
Well, I would say so, because let's say you always can assign tasks to these objects, no? So let's say that you lay out them and then you assign, at each one of them you assign a task to maybe navigate to a specific, I don't know, tab or something else, or call a window, whatever. So you can build a sort of navigation, no? To other things eventually.
Didn't mean even the tree editing, just one page of the Explorer when you have like 50 files and then you can just look at them. That's all I was looking for. But yeah, it looks like it could be built now.
I mean, you can put whatever you want inside here. Huh? Each one of these could be another grid or any other widget. So it can be a nested structure. So it's, I think you can manage to do it. You can put a panel inside or a folder, so you can open and close each one of them. And I don't know. I think
it would be an interesting task to make an actual file browser. It would be interesting, just as a proof of concept.
Yeah. Yeah. This was the internal. What? I don't know. This is for you, not for me. It's for you already.
Too much messing with the CSS here.
It's my CSS update, huh? Did you download a new version?
High contrast, I like it.
But the cool thing is that this is the algorithm for the grid. It's nicely done in a way that is properly cached at any level. So let's say that if you, for example, move it, this object, this entire grid, internally what happens, basically that nothing changes except for the last part here. Not even the scaling, just the offset. So all the structure is the same and the grid stays the same. So it's quite efficient. And yeah, so it should be nice. One thing that at the moment is not there is that you see now that I'm visualizing the cells. This is something that I'm building here manually. It's not coming from the widget itself. And for this reason, I thought that it would be cool probably to introduce the drawer also for the layout nodes, so that you can have you can implement your own drawer for a panel or for a grid. You can define yourself how to draw this. For example, retrieving the grids and displaying them in a certain way. I don't know. But internally now, because these layout nodes, no, this is fine. Not even the thing. It's just yes. So this was the guy. What is that? Yeah, because there's nothing connected there. Yeah, you just copy it without even.
Okay, it's called grid, not grid connection.
Yeah, it's called grid.
Ah, okay, it was confusing.
No. That was just internal thing, So, but internally, this grid has all the other stack and layout nodes. They use this layout node, which is very generic and operates using a layout technique. And this guy has just a background property, sort of. So you can just define a background, the rectangle, and with the fill and the stroke, but nothing else. And I think that these should be not hard-coded inside here, but should come with a default one, a default drawer that implements this, but with the possibility to also build your own drawer that maybe accept a layout techniques, so you can design a specific drawer that operates with the grid layout to work with all the information from the grid manager. And so you can be very specific. And this is also something that I'd like to do, to have the drawer for the layout nodes, so that you can build your own. And that's it. Any questions?
How much do I have to pay?
Oh man, a few drops of blood, you know. And I hope I still need to finish a couple of things, polish a bit, and then I think I will push this as a new version at the beginning of the next week. Depends on if we can manage to prepare, to adjust, to fix all the head patches, which are currently kind of broken. But yeah, I hope the beginning of the next week, mid of next week, to have the new release 3.0. So that you can play with. I think it's, in general, performance-wise, is much better. Much better. And yeah, should be nice in general. The feeling. Also patching, and the nodes are simplified. Or also just having all the wrappers for the nodes, and they are typed as VL.Elementa. It's facilitate a lot to use nodes like cons, because outside you just see VL.Elementa, and before you had to force the connection sometimes. And now it feels so just nice that it's very easy to patch with it. So yeah,
this decision is not a problem in the end. I don't know. Did you ever have this? I don't know that you could, for example, set the value on the bang later on, you know, in some loop or in some if region. So I have the instance and I call the operation set value on it, for example. Would that now break this decision that everything is an VL.Elementa output? not the actual thing anymore.
First of all,
I would need to cast it back.
yes, if you really want to do something very specific of that.
I'm just saying that's the
usually, I mean, there is already a way through the interface to retrieve the value property and operate it.
Yeah, okay.
So you do it in a general way. You pass through the Elementa interface to operate on widgets. Otherwise, it gets messy. That's the goal, no? To have one interface that allows you to operate.
No, it was just.
Yeah. And if you really need, you can always cast. But there is not much very specific, I would say, inside the widgets. They are all generic. Also, the value property itself is a generic thing that is exposed.
It's a component anyways.
It will be. The next thing is to bring these as a component, and also the layout as a component, and at the end,
then I can always just fetch the component.
And what will be left then is just the logic, which I'm not happy with, but for now, ideally it would be cool to have a way to patch your own logic. And I don't see that hard, I would say. It's just a way, probably it doesn't really fit with the state pattern. How do you patch a state pattern using entity component approach?
Sounds like a new webinar.
Huh?
Sounds like a new webinar.
A new research before.
No, I mean, in general, there is so much thoughts about, so in this library. And like, if you look at this library and go through the patches, you basically have no chance to understand what's going on. And for me, a bit the question is, how can we put all this knowledge out to everyone, to the whole community?
On the 24th of June, there will be a webinar, an Elementa webinar.
Cool.
That's official. I need to.
I mean, mainly also this idea of entity components, which is well used in all game engines and also now here. So just that you get a grasp of what it means to separate everything and then mix it together somewhere later, and then you can create many like permutations of possibilities and everything like that.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to bring that a little bit out to the community.
Yeah, we were discussing this also yesterday, that there are so many entity component libraries, and it would be cool at some point to have a entity component library for VL that you can just use as an architecture. That comes with
yeah, it would be even cooler to if there's even a package or something for the user to use it.
Yeah, to use it as a sort of framework to build your own functionalities into this architecture. That's really cool. So what I'm trying to do now is stick as much as possible to that approach. So dissolving the widgets themselves to just have an entity which has components. That's it. So that I didn't even show you the root, and I won't. I'm still working on that. No, don't. No, but just to say that even there, it's already. I need to sort a bit, but just to show you that, then you got processors that works for resizable component. You got a movable component processor, tooltip component processors, and so on. So if we really stick to this architecture of the components, then you can modularize so much. And even beyond these, I would like to get rid of this patch entirely, so that you can register your own processors. So you can just plug in your patch which has a certain component that works with a certain processor, and the system just asks for the processor to process the component, and you don't need to plug everything. You don't need to plug it into the root itself. It's something that the service that gets used by the system to handle the components. So that's the direction, and I'm kind of starting to learn a bit also from Stride, how it works there, and somehow it makes sense. So yeah, I'm taking that route, and that route means that I will try to dissolve the Elementor interface as much as possible. It's also nice because then you can really bring all the functionalities within the Elementor itself. So the stylable component, the system doesn't know anything about the style. Now, the stylable component itself internally take a style sheet, compute the style, and grab the children of the widget. Let's say that this is a layout. You basically take the children of the layout and take the stylable components of the children and inject the computed style in the children. So he takes care of talking to the other stylable components. So it's completely independent system.
So you could even move it out, put it in its own document.
Yes.
The whole styling thing, the processor, the component,
well,
put it all out.
Since
you have this one, okay, but in its essence, you could move the whole styling thing into its own VL document.
That's what I'm saying.
And the core, Elementor core, has no idea about
the user could create a new document with a specific component that implements the iComponent interface, then with a registers a specific processor, and then that immediately get consumed by the system and used inside the system, but out of the box. That's good to know.
Then there's so many questions: which processor runs first in frame?
Yeah, but that's something that you can maybe define within the iComponent processor interface. You can have a sort of order, like I'm already having actually.
Well, maybe it's not that important.
Sometimes important. I mean, look here. There is also draw priority now. For example, it's already there. Draw priority. You can define which one gets drawn on top. But you can do the same, no? Which one get notified, or I don't know. You can get fancy. But instead of being an explicit patch here, it would be just something that gets instantiated on the fly.
Right. Also calling these systems processors.
Yeah. And they have an order. Let's try to define the order. You can. Optional order.
Okay. Yeah, there are some other changes, many changes in the widgets. I changed a bit the drawer of the press so that we can have a text in there. What else? Yeah, there are some changes.
Did you tweak the color?
I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, that's it. Cool.
Very nice.
This was the update.
Yeah, really cool changes.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm quite happy. It's a freaking endless thing, though. It's a rabbit hole we are getting. So I will force myself to stop doing it. Please help me in this to stop me. And but yeah, any suggestion, any any issue?
No, I will immediately update. Is it already available, this grid manager?
Well, no, I didn't commit on. It's available in my branch, my development branch.
All right. Okay. I would check it out and then try to build my application further, and then I can provide better feedback probably.
But it's called Grid already.
It's called Grid.
Grid, yeah.
And yeah, so nothing's come to my mind. Nothing comes to mind. So I hope you enjoyed, and Yeah, I will just let you know when I manage to push. Ideally, okay, there will be this webinar. I don't know in 3 hours how much deep I will be able to go.
Everybody will think it's about using Elementa, but it's of course about the inner workings.
This webinar will be about using.
Using.
Yes.
I was.
You won't be part of it. No, but I think that I don't know.
I need it for a merge tool. I need to.
I would
some
start
messages.
the way I would like to do it is that I would start from using, then if we manage over time to go deeper in. Well, of course. No,
It's another audience.
There's enough to talk in 3 hours.
just use it.
Just using it.
One question is maybe the grid is so nice, it has even more power than the stack nodes now. Isn't the stack node now just a grid with only one column or one row for stack Y and stack X?
Yeah, I thought about it. It's so flexible that in a way it looks like it could replace some of them. Well, let me think about it. There are some, well, maybe the stack, but there are other widgets. There is distribute, there is other, which behaves differently in the way they allocate. No, I don't remember. But yeah, I thought that in theory, I mean, just this node could replace most of the use scenarios. I agree. It's very flexible. And
Yeah, there's maybe still a need if you combine a stack X and a stack Y, then you could have like different number of rows in a column. That is a thing you can't do just with a grid. So there still will be a need, but of course you can just combine like different grids.
yeah, you can put a grid inside another grid. So let's see. But I mean, I tried to make a grid that was flexible enough to be usable everywhere. So let's see. Just using it, then we will realize. Sometimes it's just convenient to have a stack which is very simple, no? That you just plug there and stack your objects. You don't want to set, I don't know.
Add less pins, maybe.
Yeah,
it's easier. Just easier because it has this one simple idea of just.
Then, yeah, I don't know. Let's see.
What I wanted to ask is all these wrapper nodes, they are only there to be able to put the type annotation I element.
No, they are there because we wanted to have a spectral version for the component. Because for when I would start to build the VL.Elementa.editor library model, I'd like to register some services, some editors, in which I can feed the components as a spread. And this was impossible with the P group.
Yeah.
And for this, and this is to be, and you're working with it, no? You say that, Fabian said that.
And we have the same problem in the stride nodes.
It should be optional.
Yeah, you want to decide on application side whether it's a pin group or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or my last thought was maybe that you have both. You always have the spread, which is 0, and I can just add, would be another option. That I don't need to choose this or over the other, I simply have both.
Yeah, but if you have connection, you remove all of them, suddenly the first thing.
No, the spread is always there, and the others just get appended, basically. It was just a thought I had, that you don't have this or the other thing.
No, to me, it would be just a configuration. No.
Yeah, but I think a configuration could also go on the nerve. Always like, click other one.
But that's something.
Shitty.
I don't know. That's something you don't do that often. Just when you design a library, for example, or you don't.
You're sure? I'm using those nodes then all the time. Yeah,
I think
it was just a thought.
But usually you just have control plus, you have the pin groups. No? But
you mean that
you're saying that the spectral node doesn't come with the
you
right.
should be able to define the default if you want to have the spread or the pin group by default.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I could switch back to that.
Exactly. That's the thing. If you want to have a sort of, when you design the node, it's by default with pin group. Then if you want to advance,
you have this one scenario.
You switch back.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the advanced one is not a wrapper, so I'll just stay there.
Yeah. So you just have the wrapper to tackle both issues.
Yeah, I did first for the component, then I realized that on the user side, it's we just provide some nice interface.
Since you have the wrapper anyways to make use of the spectral in another way, to expose it with pin group, you have the wrapper anyway. So then on these ones you can put the type annotation, but on the spectral ones you are unable to. Okay.
Do you think it will be possible to force a node to present itself?
It would be on the process node, no? The state output, you would say,
just this one instead of being.
Now you would on the process node, you would say the state output type is I-element.
Yeah. In the process definition itself.
If you go into the toggle here to the left, there to the state output, there you would have a type annotation field here. Yeah, an optional. They say cool. I-Elementum, then it's.
That's cool.
Makes sense. I wanted it also already sometimes.
When I thought,
or just a toggle.
No,
so
you can have.
You can.
Could be any.
But okay. But the other question, of course, is yes, we have pin groups in the language for several reasons, but maybe it's good practice to not use them. I don't know. Like you always can have a cons node. It's one node more, of course. But I don't know. Isn't it cleaner in a way?
No, I think
to like always have one node.
No, the cons node, it just looks too fat. I mean, we could render the cons node without body or something like that, super small. Then it doesn't look like it has the same importance than the label node or something like that.
That's another idea. Yeah.
Cons nodes around, this is quite.
Saber?
Did you read my comment in the Elementa matrix chat?
No.
So I was just proposing. I think that you can have all this combination of spectral pin and a pin group in a visual way on top of the node. So, for example, if it's a spectral input, like a spread input, it could just be not a pin, which is a square, but like a bar, and then you can design. You can decide as a user where you drop on that bar. So I was just proposing that it's just a matter of visual representation of all these things.
Yeah. I quite like actually the pin groups, I have to say. I mean, it feels very high level, no? Somehow you can have a slider and you can just plug a feature to it. I like the simplicity, honestly. And because the cons is already, it's describing how you build, how you wrap together something. Yeah, but this is not necessarily something that you want to show to the user.
Yeah, alone that on the cons you need to decide what cons, the spread one, the la 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 one, the others.
Yeah, but
you know, they are already.
But the cons, it's about
it's already too much.
Okay. It's about something that you not necessarily want to show.
Yeah.
I don't want to show that. I don't want to know that there's a spread internally. I just want to taggable and fit to my slider.
Yeah.
I just want to see that.
Yeah, I don't want to have this other noise.
I don't want to even know what is a spread. So I will keep it as simple and suggesting it's a matter of designing a nice way and an interaction way to cooperate with it.
And there is this other issue with pin groups that isn't an issue in Elementa because the order of all the components isn't important as I get it. But if the order is important and you have a large pin group, a large const node, and you want to reorder it or you want to just remove the second one of a group node that has like 16 inputs, then it's always a pain. And that's again the main reason why I proposed such a visual tool for it. And if you have that visual tool, then you can think about several optimizations about it.
Mm.
This is already
It's very similar. Yeah.
Somehow.
If you want to take that link and put it on the other pin, and so it's
Move them around here is not possible.
yeah,
But at least you can remove some of them, insert others. I mean, this kind of.
Are you saying you don't drag the link around, you drag the pin around, and by that you drag the link around?
Yeah.
Ah.
You resort the pins.
Yeah, I mean, that's now, I think the first step is done because we now have an actual visual element for the pin group in 2022. And this can, of course, be then extended to more interaction. Currently, it's not interactive, it's just a visual thing. But yes, at some point it can interact, of course. And then, yeah, it'd be super cool to just, when you start a link, this pin group highlights, and then you see little pins in between, or you can X some pins and then they disappear in the middle or something like that.
So, yeah, the visual representation you showed, that's totally the right thing, I guess. It totally transports the meaning, like these pins belong together somehow.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Okay, but there could still be a nice idea how to get these two nodes. Like if I provide a spectral version, the system could be intelligent enough to somehow make a normal version out of it.
The pin group version.
The pin group version. If you have a spectral implementation, then
I mean, to me, there shouldn't be two versions. It should be the same node.
But then, if it's the same node, then you ask from the end user that he always selects configures this one node because there's just one node. So and what's the default? It's not that easy. But if there are two nodes in the node browser, easily can choose them fast without the need to configure them. But okay, it's maybe.
We building. Well, it's. I think that this passing between pin groups and spectral is not something that you do often. When you patch, I think it's an action that happens constantly. So I don't know. I wouldn't bother too much.
I kind of also liked Elias' idea that you have both options. always just present. So you can.
I can just add. Why not?
You have a spread input, but the spread input can have single additions to it. Yeah, that's also.
And you essentially only define how many of those additional pins should be there from the start.
I don't like it.
It's a bit cryptic.
Yeah, it's a bit unclear because of the types and the name.
I think it's two different. You're presenting two different ways to fit the same things into the node. It's a bit confusing.
I mean, often you need it. I mean, there's a spread of things, and then you want to add one thing in the end. So it's kind of.
Yeah, but that's another. That's a way to operate on spreads. It's something.
Yeah, sure.
It's a node to insert a slice. It's another it's another domain where in there we are operating on spreads, and then there are certain set of tools to operate on spreads. I think we are talking about how to represent the interaction between nodes. You can also. I don't know. I think that having just the option, being able to choose the default, which one you prefer,
yeah, for sure, it will already help for 99% of the cases, and then you have these other ones.
I also often thought of rendering the cons node differently. It's basically just a line with pins, or the decons as well. So it doesn't look so fat in the patch. It's just a line where you can connect things.
What are you guys doing?
I don't know.
Just wanted to try something. Is it great? No.
And then there is this use case, especially in this system, when the order doesn't matter.
What? Sorry?
When the order of the components doesn't matter, or does it matter, the order of the components? Is there a hierarchy involved?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
No, because wait, internally they are stored as a dictionary.
And the order of the processors matters, right?
No. It's just that internally, each of the widget comes with a set of predefined components. No? So if you provide an external, let's say that you want to have the overable component outside, you can provide it. No? You can have an overable component here. And then this will be the component that get used, okay? Because it's when the component dictionary is built, it gives priority to the one that you provide from outside, okay? And since you use set item in a dictionary, this one that comes from outside will override the internal one. But there are certain rules that I define, like for some of them, like taggable, or I merge the tags on the one that you provide from outside and the one that are given already inside. So there is a constructor for the dictionary that builds the component dictionary here, which say, okay, take the name, contains, if it's not contained, that add it to the dictionary. Otherwise, yeah, you take care of merging the tags, merging the attributes, so you can still have, so the order matters in a way that the one that are outside have a priority of the one that are inside when you build the dictionary. So you will never have two attributes of the same type. Okay? The one that wins is the one that is outside.
Can you have a bit and proof?
I need to go, guys, but a lovely time with you all. Thank you. And
yeah, me too. It's already 8. Got stuff to do.
Bye.
See you soon.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
But this is something that I also wanted to change. I was talking to you guys yesterday. It shouldn't even be a dictionary of Elementa, of components. It should be just a list of them, so that you could have multiple of them. Obviously, the process then would take care of just reading the first of the overall component, let's say. Or but that's something that the system itself takes care of. But in theory, it would be nicer to be able to feed multiple times component of the same tag. Let's say, for example, if you want to add a tag to this widget, now you have to put a taggable component, okay? Okay. Oh. And this guy then expect objects.
Yeah, but I think that's the correct way, to be honest. That's his problem that he can't deal with many. It's not
yeah. You could have a tag component simply. You can have multiple tag components.
Yeah, but then just saying, I think that's cleaner, like you did it here.
That's cleaner. As it expressed, like here now, taggable means that.
It's just the problem of that component. It's that responsibility to have many tags.
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But now we got sidetracked by the question was about how to represent in groups.
Dominic is here also.
Yeah, just checking in for a bit, and I'll have to go. But just let me know when you're finished, so I stop it.
Yeah, we can.
And yeah, just with this taggable thing, I mean, if you have more of them, how do you take it out? So I think one makes sense now.
Sorry?
Well,
one taggable makes sense. It
okay.
makes more sense than to have many.
Like this taggable component is for like taking the tag out somewhere else again from the element. No.
No, it's just
Assign a tag.
Yeah. You can assign any sort of tags, really. You can tag the widget.
Yeah, what do you do with the tag?
In the style, for example, you can build style rules that check, okay, if your element has a certain tag, then apply this rule, for example.
Okay.
Or you can do this kind of stuff, which is sort of, it's like the classes in CSS.
Yeah, so then if you like put extra, it would just concatenate them and.
Well, internally, it's just an hash set of objects.
Yeah.
So it's just a collection of tags, and then it's up to the functionality that check them to go through them and check each one of them. Cool. Okay, I think we can close, and yeah, I'll update you when I push the final release next week. And yeah, thanks for your inputs.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, goodbye.
Tschüss. Baba.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.